Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So, yesterday we had our first broadcast, had a discussion talking about the topic of racism, and we uploaded the video of that discussion on YouTube. And one of the questions that came was I have a question for the group. MashaAllah, is a good question. Do you think it is deemed as not important, hence why a lot of books are not written about it over the years from contemporary or classic writings, and it's just a few here and there? I know a few people have written on the issue, but that's not good enough considering we are the best of nations. And then he mentions quotes an ayah. So the question is, why don't we find more writing on the topic of racism from scholars? Historically, there's been quite a lot written about racism from the scholars, but like we alluded to in yesterday's discussion, what is racism? Now, in Islam speaks against jahiliyyah, acting with jahiliyyah. What does jahiliyyah mean? You could say fakhr bil ansab, showing off with your nasab, with your nation, saying your nation is better than another nation. Essentially putting other nations down, raising other nations up. I'm better than he, this person's better than that person. Why? Because of the way they're born. So fakhr bil ansab, or that kind of thing, that has been spoken about extensively by scholars over the years. Because we have hadith, we have a whole collection of hadith and ayat talking about this issue of qawmiyah. So obviously it's impossible for scholars to not talk about that. So they do. The issue of not talking, in Surah Al-Hujurat, وَلَا تَنَابَزُوا بِالْأَلْقَابِ, don't call names. So every time the ayah is mentioned, no doubt the scholars will explain it or talk about the inherent evil of calling people's names, giving people nicknames, that kind of stuff. So that's been covered. But like as you mentioned about the issue of racism is not really a topic it's not really a word, I should say, that is spoken in Islam. Jahiliyyah is spoken in Islam. Racism is a construct which is foreign actually to Islam. So maybe the reason why it has been spoken like that in that particular topic is because the word and the concept didn't exist in the Islamic context. Jahiliyyah did exist, which is saying you're better than someone else or someone is less than someone else. That does exist. And that is spoken about extensively. Now, there was a book by Abdul Salam Budjis. He was one of the scholars and also one of the main judges in Saudi Arabia. He passed away a couple of decades ago. It was a car accident. A camel that killed him. But he had a whole book on al-unsuriyah, or basically was referred to as an affiliation, you could say, to your unsur, to your what they call type. And like I said, this is, you could say that even the title of the book is a modern word. The word unsuriya doesn't again, you won't find it in the books of the past, because this whole idea of types, there are different types of human beings, again, that doesn't exist. We are all Bani Adam, and we are reminded of that every single time. Even the final khutbah the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave in Hajj spoke specifically about that. So that means every Muslim in his lifetime has at least heard some or all of that final khutbah, and has definitely heard that we are all, there's no virtue of an Arab or a non-Arab, or a black or a red or whatever, right? It's all, so you can't really say that Muslims don't discuss this, or Muslim scholars don't discuss it. It's discussed in a way that you can't even avoid it, unless you somehow try to. But the question still lies though, why is it then that such an ideology is prevalent still, even though it is mentioned? Why is it still prevalent in Muslim communities? And I guess that's what we're going to discuss in the later parts, part 2 and part 3. But generally speaking, human beings, and I mean human beings, this doesn't mean white people or Asian people or African people. I'm talking about people as a whole. All have the capacity for racism, because racism fundamentally or Jahiliyyah, I would say fundamentally, is basically drawing a conclusion about a people based on where and when and how they are born. And we know, as we mentioned in yesterday's video, that Islam is a meritocracy. It rewards for what you do, for merit, and the opposite. So if you have been given some special privilege just because of your lineage, that is Jahiliyyah manifesting itself, and Qawmiyah, or nationalism, come into play. Now, this has definitely spread in the Muslim nations, nationalism. I am Iraqi and my Iraqi people and all this kind of stuff. That spread a lot, especially after colonialism. And I'm sure it was also there before that. But I think one thing we should do is not try and draw an exact parallel between the types of racism that we have here and the types of racism that Muslims express. Meaning, and this is my own personal experience, is that as much as the Muslim wants to be racist, and they will definitely be racist, and they do express racism, fundamentally they cannot escape, by the nature of Islam, that their belief is inherently wrong, as opposed to other beliefs and other religions like Christianity or whatnot, where they justify their racism on a theological level, on an ideological level. So, for example, classic case, guy wants to marry a girl, he approaches the dad says, no, you're not gonna marry because you're blah blah blah. Now, as long as the argument goes on, he would willingly admit that, I have nothing against these people, it's all good, we're all Muslim. We hear it all the time, we're all Muslim, no difference, African, Asian, we're all the same, but no. So fundamentally, as much as he is still exhibiting the characteristics of a racist person, he still can't say you're blah 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 because you are blah blah blah. I mean, he might say it in anger, but he can't believe that, because Islam doesn't support that. As opposed to a Christian or a Jew, especially a Jew, they can say that because fundamentally in their belief system, that is what is being said. There are people who are better than others inherently by their birth. Or Hinduism, same thing. It's actually woven within the doctrine of a Hindu that there are different castes, and some castes are higher than others. That doesn't exist with Muslims. So Muslims do exhibit Jahiliyyah, but you do find it that Islam literally shackles them. It limits their capacity to be racist. Now, what I have found though, and I'll draw this close because we've still got part 2 and part 3 to come, and I'm sure we're going to discuss that anyway. What I have found though, for experience, is that the more a person learns about Islam, the less they can be racist. Let me explain what I mean by can be racist. As in, you can still exhibit racism, but fundamentally, without some serious cognitive dissonance, the more a person learns about Islam, the less likely they will be that way inclined. I.e., the more ignorant a person is about Islam, the more you find that they are racist. That doesn't mean that a scholar can't be racist. There are definitely scholars who have racist ideologies, but as Brother Abdul Haq mentioned yesterday, when you draw them up on this and say, Sheikh, this is incorrect because of blah, 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 they're stuck. And they know they're stuck. They've learned how they're stuck. They've memorized the hadith that they're stuck. They are stuck. There's no real way of justifying it. They are stuck. If they have it, it's a jahiliyyah in them, and they have to recognize it, acknowledge it, and make effort to remove it. And this is why I believe that everyone has the capacity, and actually is, at some level, racist. But what makes us less racist is when we have the capacity to self-reflection. We have the capacity for self-reflection, reflecting on our actions, our motivations. Why do we do certain things? Why do we think a certain way? Why do I approach people in a certain way? Why do I do this? If people can analyze themselves and recognize when it's occurring, then they can stop. When they can recognize they can do it, then they can stop. But if anyone who listens to me or hears me thinks that, I'm not racist, I'll call you a liar. Yes, you're not an extreme racist. Yes, you're not a person who believes in your racism and acts on your racism, but you are human, and you do prejudge people. We all do it. And we do have stereotypes, which is in ourselves. We all make stereotypes. We see or hear certain things, and we make stereotypes. But the question is, how much of that can you fight against? Just like Just like a person has, like a man. A man may want to look at women, but some of us will just do it. Whatever, you know. Oh, I can see one. Oh, I can see one. Then there's no resistance to the urge. Whereas others will be like, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. They want the urge is there, but yet they know it's wrong and they resist it. And I think it's pretty much like that. We all have the urges, but what makes us better or less is how much we can recognize it and resist it. So to answer your question again, so I mean to conclude, why is not much written on it from the scholars? Probably because a lot of the scholars have been afflicted with the same disease and maybe not recognized it. But at the same time, we can't say it's not spoken about. I say it is spoken quite extensively in Islam by scholars, but not specifically as a topic like you would probably have it in our society, because in our society it's more prevalent in your face. We're more multicultural, we're more mixed, it's more visible, but it definitely is acknowledged. Even in places like Saudi Arabia, where I lived there for 7 years, it is known that there's tribalism in Saudi Arabia. It is known. I mean, not to the level and extent we might have it here, but there is tribalism that's there. Some tribes will get favors, other tribes won't get amongst individuals. It does occur, but every single person knows it's wrong. And if you pull them up on it, then they have nothing to say. I mean, if they're religious. If they're not religious, then they will say, hey, speak. But if they have some deen in them, and just to conclude, I had one teacher. And I'll go on. I do apologize. I do go on. I had one teacher. My fiqh teacher. I love him, because he was almost like a non-refined sheikh. That's probably the best way to put it. I.e., if you never knew he was a sheikh, you think he was a Bedouin. You think he was just a Bedouin Arab, because he was just raw like that. He was raw, raw. But what was good about him is that he was raw to the level of sincerity to the level of ikhlas. It was just pure sincerity. He would just tell you how it is, sincerely, not with malice, but just tell you how it is. And he said in our class, he said, I don't advise any of you guys to marry a Saudi woman, because they think too much of themselves. They'll look down on you because they're Arab. He's saying that, he's a Saudi. But he's acknowledging, he's recognizing the inherent nature of what he guesses his people. And he's saying that they have in them a sense of, I am Saudi. And because of that, maybe to some level, I'm inherently better. Now, like obviously in levels, some may feel that way, may feel that way and act on it. But some may feel that way, recognize it's wrong, and then subdue it. But you cannot ignore the inherent nature of people. We inherently love or have this thing in us where we feel a certain way, affiliation to others, and disassociation, you could say, from others based on familiarity. I am familiar with this culture, with this people, with this blah, 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 blah. So I don't know if that's answered your question. Tune in today, 8 o'clock. There'll be part 2 of today's broadcast. And then tomorrow will be the conclusion, inshallah ta'ala. Hopefully we want to have an open discussion on the topic. So if you want to take part in that, please let us know. We'll call you up and you can talk live broadcast on our radio on Sunday. Sunday what day is it today? Okay, Sunday what's today? I don't know. Sunday from the upload this video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.